The title of my talk today is What is True? Which is pretty broad. What is true? Well, we humans, we have 10 fingers, most of us. We have one nose. What else is true? The Rams won. Good or bad, depending on where you're from. What is true? Our words matter. Climate change is real. What is true? Every action has a reaction. And what is true is that everything in the universe is in relationship with each other. Everything in the universe is in relationship with each other. There's a piece written by Aubrey Marcus that has made the rounds on social media. I think I may have even read it over the summer, but it's so germane to this conversation, I want to bring it in this morning. He wrote, "You are comprised of 84 minerals, 23 elements, and 8 gallons of water spread across 38 trillion cells. You have been built up from nothing by the spare parts of the earth you have consumed, according to a set of instructions, hidden in a double helix and small enough to be carried by a sperm. You are recycled butterflies, plants, rocks, streams, firewood, wolf fur, and shark teeth, broken down to their smallest parts and rebuilt into our planet's most complex living thing. You are not living on Earth. You are Earth." This passage always reminds me that not only are we of this earth, we are of each other. We are of all creatures and living things, and we are made up of each other, all creatures and living things. We are made up of minerals and stardust and the water that was here since time began. Everything in the universe is in relationship to each other. And yet, we humans forget this, don't we? I think it's part of why we're here. I think it's a big part of why we are here, too. As Mother Teresa said, remember that we belong to each other. We belong to each other no matter what. There was an old man named Joe, and he lived out really, really far out in the country, off of a country road, in the middle of nowhere. He had one neighbor, and it was his best friend, his lifelong friend since they were young boys, Sam. Sam lived in another house way out in the middle of nowhere. These two had grown up together, and they had both raised their families out there in the middle of nowhere together. They spent holidays together. They were more like family, really. They raised their kids, and then their kids eventually grew up and moved out and were living lives of their own away. And over time, both of their spouses passed. And these two gentlemen, old Joe and Sam, only had each other out there in the middle of nowhere. Well, one day, they got in an argument. And it was actually the first major argument they'd ever had in their whole lives. And it was ridiculous. How many of us have had huge arguments over ridiculous things? Anybody? Just me? So one day a calf wandered into Sam's yard. And old Joe said, "Hey, Sam, that's my calf." And Sam said, "No, it's not. That's my calf. That calf wandered into my yard." Old Joe said, "But that calf has the markings of the same cow that I have. That's my calf." And Sam said, "Well, it's mine now." Anybody? Well, old Joe was furious. He was like, that's stealing. You can't take my calf." He said, "It's not stealing. The calf wandered into my yard." Neither of them needed this calf, by the way. Let's be clear. So they both got so angry, and they were stubborn. They dug their heels in. And they stopped talking to each other for a couple of days. Their kids called them, their adult kids called them on the phone and said, "What are you doing? Make up. This is ridiculous. It's a calf. This is silly. This is stupid. Make up." "I'm not making up. I'm right. I'm not making up. I'm right." They stopped talking for a week. The week turned into a month. The month turned into 6 months. 6 months turned into a year. Neither one of them would speak to the other. They were out there in the middle of nowhere. They could see each other's houses. They were alone, slamming their door as they went in and slamming their door as they went out. Finally, Sam just got so sick of it that he hitched a plow to his tractor and he drained the pond in the upper part of his property. He created a creek bed all the way down the line, the property line that separated their two properties. So there was now a creek, a small creek separating the two of them. That's how mad he was. This infuriated old Joe. He was furious. He wanted to get back at him. I think at this point they probably just forgot what they were even arguing about in the first place. Well, one morning, old Joe decided he was going to go into town. Town was so far away that it was a day-long trip. He would have to leave early in the morning and come back just as the sun was coming down. And early that morning, he heard a knock on his door. So old Joe opened the door, and there was a young man with very kind eyes who said, "Excuse me, sir, I don't mean to bother you. I'm just passing through. I'm a handyman, and I just wondered if maybe you might need some work done around the place." Old Joe said, "Yes, perfect timing, that's it. I have the exact job for you, my friend. I have lumber in my barn. I want you to build the tallest fence you possibly can right up to that creek so I don't have to look at that property or that creek anymore." The handyman said, Wow, you must be really mad at your neighbor. You must hate your neighbor." Old Joe said, "You know what, I can't even look at him anymore. I don't even want to see the house anymore. It hurts too much. Just build a fence. Just build a fence." The handyman said, "I see. Okay. All right. I'll help you out." And so old Joe went off for the whole day. And that handyman worked from that morning all the way until the sun came down. He didn't even stop for lunch. He was hauling the boards of wood from the barn to the creekside. He was nailing those boards. He was very skilled. He worked very fast. And the end of the day came, and old Joe drove up. He drove up to his property. He jumped out of his truck. He couldn't speak. He just stood there. The handyman hadn't built a fence. The handyman built a small footbridge across the creek with handrails and everything. Joe was standing there with his mouth, his jaw wide open before he could even say anything. Sam, who'd been watching all of this all day from his kitchen window, came running out of his house, his arms open. He ran across the bridge to his best friend, old Joe, tears in his eyes, saying, thank you. I am so sorry. I was so wrong. I am so sorry." And the two of them embraced, and they laughed, and they wiped more than a few tears away. And then they emptied their pockets, and they gave the handyman all the cash they had and that dang calf. And the handyman went on his way. And the two gentlemen lived out their days crossing that bridge every morning for coffee and every evening for supper. You know, I remember about 15 years ago-ish, I was having a very heated conversation with an extended family member of my own. And this family member was determined to convince me to think a certain way about a certain thing. And it just wasn't congruent with my beliefs. And after a long time going around and around and around and around, after sharing that I had my truth and it was my truth, I finally, out of genuine curiosity, said to this family member of mine, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy here with me? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And without missing a beat, my family member went, I want to be right. which, now I can laugh at because this family member has done a lot of work on themselves, and it's really been beautiful to witness. But at the time, it was really sad, It was really sad. How many times do we do that? We have all been Sam, claiming that calf or whatever it is for us, that it's rightfully ours, clinging to the need to be right, so much so that we create an actual divide, in Sam's case, a creek, between ourselves and the possibility that we just might be acting on misinformation. If we humans think that we may be wrong often, and behavioral psychologists and scientists tell us this, if we think we may be wrong, often we hold on even tighter to our opinion. We gather more evidence to prove and to justify our position. It's exactly what Reverend Masando was speaking about in the Sonia Renee Taylor reading. We hold on rather than allowing ourselves to just not know, to let go. Just to prove, to justify our position, how absurd it might be. And we've all been old Joe, just wanting to build that dang fence around our heart to protect ourselves from any more hurt. We've been both. We are both. We have both in us, and becoming aware so that we can heal that before a year or a lifetime passes, I believe, is our holy work here. It's our holy work. Gwendolyn Brooks was an author, poet, teacher, and the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize. She wrote, "We are each other's harvest." We are each other's harvest. I was meditating on that this morning, and I invite you into that. We are each other's harvest. Spirit expresses through each one of us. There's no two leaves or two stars or two waves or two blades of grass or two human beings that are exactly the same. And as such, Spirit, Source, God expresses through us according to our own uniqueness. And this in itself is life-giving if we allow it. This unique harvest that each one of us contributes to the growth of each other. The ancients knew this. They understood our interconnection with each other. It showed up in their cosmology as reincarnation. That we're all connected on the seen and the unseen sides of life, that we are all here in support and in activity to each other, in relationship in some way. I'm so excited to be teaching this in my workshop. It starts tomorrow night, New Thought and Reincarnation, if you're at all interested. Our theme this month at New Thought Center for Spiritual Living is being love. And we are here to be love as best as we can. Reverend Masando spoke so wonderfully last week about Valentine's Day, and he shared something I found really, really fascinating, that the name Valentine or Valentina, the woman's name Valentina, is connected to the word worth or worthy. Each of us is worthy of receiving great love in all of its forms. Great, big, magnificent, huge, glorious love. Yesterday would have been Toni Morrison's 91st birthday. She was such a force of wisdom and truth. From her Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, Beloved, she wrote, "Love is or it ain't. Thin love ain't love at all." Love is or it ain't. Thin love ain't love at all. We are here to love big. to be like that kind but defiant handyman who I have enormous respect for. I mean, seriously, wasn't that an awesome move? We're here to build bridges instead of walls. And my friends, we are here to take deep breaths of vulnerability, which is actually the deep breath of courage, and walk across those bridges. So how do we do this? I have two specific suggestions, two specific spiritual tools for you that actually come from the ancients. All spiritual tools, all wisdom comes from the ancients. It's just repackaged in modern day wrapping, or, one of those cute little bags, if you don't have time to wrap a gift. The first is from the Tao Te Ching. Verse 48 says, "In the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the practice of the Tao, every day something is dropped." We tend to go through life thinking about what we can get, what we can accomplish, how we can fill a perceived void. The divine request, though, the spiritual choice to consider each day, and I invite you to do this in the morning, is to consider what false idea or fixated opinion or insecurity you might be willing to drop or let go of. Where can we release our ego and our need to be right, my friends? In dropping or letting go of our egoic getting and winning inner clutter, because that's what it is, it's inner clutter, we ultimately become far more wise and compassionate beings. So this week, I invite you to notice, what is it that you are holding on to? What calf are you holding on to? And then I invite you to take a deep breath and lay it down. Just lay it down and see what happens. See what happens. The second spiritual tool that I want to bring to you today comes from the Sufi tradition. Just like old Joe and Sam in the story, all of us have had many different experiences of stubbornness and digging our heels in, of not being flexible or allowing ourselves to be influenced by outside appearances. We're so easily influenced by gossip or pure conjecture often. Remember, drama is optional. Drama is optional. Are you with me? All right. So how do we do that? How do we reduce drama in our lives? Because I don't know about you, but I've had enough. How do we release drama? Well, we can avoid it by asking ourselves the following three questions, and these are called the three Sufi gates. In some traditions it's four, but the original is three. It's the three Sufi gates. Number one, is it true? Ask yourself before you speak about something, is it true? Byron Katie does amazing work in this area, if you want to go deeper with this question. Is it true? The second question, does it need to be said? Is it beneficial if I say it? Does it need to be said? And third, if so, can it be said with kindness and love? That's it. That's incredible ancient wisdom right there for us today. Literally handed over thousands of years. Think about it. Whatever that thing is that you are ready to say out of your mouth that could potentially harm or hurt another being, is it true? Do you know that for sure? Is it true? Does it need to be said? Will this be beneficial? And if so, can it be said with kindness out of love? It's a game, a changer, and a bridge builder. I invite you into this practice this week. Just consider before you say something the three gates, the three Sufi gates. This helps us stay aligned as peacemakers and aligned as bridge builders. And then just remember, drama, always optional.